Hi, and welcome to the In Conversation with podcast. I'm Shea in the Catskills in conversation with Camille Michelle Gray today.
Hi.
Hi, and I'm going to introduce you in just a moment. And I just want to say this is the inaugural episode of this podcast. So thank you for being first in line.
Thank
And
you. What an honor.
I'm Shea in the Catskills. I'm a queer artist, tarotist, intuition facilitator, pleasure activist, library clerk, living in the Catskills of New York. And Camille Michelle Gray is an astrologer, a writer, a musician, and a civil servant living in Washington, D.C. And she's been practicing astrology since 2017. Her consults are steeped in the soulful concepts and archetypal poetry of evolutionary astrology and are also informed by the technical and traditional techniques of Hellenistic astrology. She writes a lot about astrology too, which is actually how we met. We'll talk about that in a moment. She writes about astrology for her website, for social media, and for the astrology podcast with Chris Brennan. She's also a staff writer for a new astrology dating app that will be releasing later on this year. Be on the lookout for that. I don't know how much you can talk about it, but we are going to be talking about some things that you're up to. But welcome to you, Camille. Thank you so much for making time today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on the very first episode. I hope we get off to a good start.
And so far, so good.
Yeah.
It's the onset of a very busy holiday weekend. We're recording this on Friday, September 1st,
hmm
2023 at 6:23 p.m. Eastern. And so thank you for making time before the holiday weekend starts.
Of course.
So let's just like land and arrive. How are you arriving to this moment? How's your day been? What's the condition of your heart in this moment?
The condition of my heart is pretty refreshed. I always get like half of a Friday off whenever there's a holiday weekend at my job. So I took advantage of that. I did a little beauty thing. And then in preparation of this podcast or really any important talking, I take a nap. So I'm arriving awake, which is good.
I love that for you and for
Yeah.
both of us. Do you usually nap? Are you a napper or just
100% a napper, been a napper since, like, adolescence, and so it's not like 30 minutes naps either, it's like 2 hours or more a day.
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just admiring that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm arriving feeling quite delicious about
Mm.
having this conversation, getting to talk to you a little bit outside of a consult situation. I've been up since like before 5:30. My cat had me up early and it's been a long day, but like I don't really feel like this is work. This is fun for me.
Yeah, I
So I'm
understand.
excited.
Me too.
And I'd like to just talk a little bit about like how we know each other, how we
Mhm.
met. And if you're okay with it, I actually have the tweet that is that okay for me to
Yeah,
share? I'm
go
going to go
for
ahead
it.
and share it. Is that working? Can you see it?
I can see it, yeah.
Great. So, um, I really recommend following Camille on social media. Her Twitter account is amazing, even though I try not to be on there too much anymore. That was how I met her. Um, Although her Instagram feed is also excellent. And she recently reposted
Mhm.
on her Instagram feed the tweet that caused me to actually reach out to her for a consultation. She wrote, if depression is anger that is suppressed, then paradoxically, we can look to our Mars placement as what impulses, when suppressed, may source depression. With Mars in Gemini, muting myself, being misunderstood, suppressing honesty, all very real contributors to my depression. So there were so many things that I appreciated about that tweet. Your just transparency about your humanness. Love
Mhm.
that. Also, contend with depression too.
Yeah.
And I've had many astrology readings in my life, but no astrologer really had ever said much about my Mars placement. I also have Mars in Gemini.
Nice.
Shout out to all my Mars and Gemini people.
Right? Love us.
And that was why I reached out to you. And you did a natal chart reading for me that was incredible and so full. Let me
Mhm.
just say, when people ask me, do I recommend an astrologer? I recommend you. I've never I've had many natal chart readings, but I've never had a natal chart reading that was so full of
Mm.
clear, precise information framed in such an affirming and helpful way. It was like hearing such an excellent story
Aw,
about
thank you.
myself. So just want to say that.
I appreciate it.
And so I'm just curious, like, how did astrology find you? What was that process like? Because you're clearly obsessed
Yeah.
and I want to hear about it.
Yeah, you were right in that it found me, so life has a mysterious way. I wanna preface that by saying I was born into, like, a very spiritual family or just to a spiritual mother, and so shortly after I was born, I think she had her cards read by a psychic about who I'd be, to, like, just calm her nerves, and so I feel like just from the moment of my inception, I was always just steeped in different methods of divination. And then as I grew up, I became a deeply spiritual person and come from a multicultural family. And so my sister-in-law, she's from India. And so she's the one who actually started talking about astrology like at our gatherings, because of course that's as perfunctory as the weather forecast over there, which I think it should be here too. And so that kind of planted a seed, but it wasn't until I had a personal shakeup of my own, a breakup, where I was, as we all do during, you know, hard times, looking for an answer as like, why? Why is this happening? Or why am I like this? And so that became the kind of earnest start of everything that I've been doing and has led me up until this moment. That was about 7 or 7.5 years ago. Yeah.
And so, how did you start your study? After I had my reading with you, I
Mm.
was like, oh, I'm going to study astrology too. And I
Yeah.
got started and I was like, yeah, no,
It's a lot, right?
it's very, very, and not
Yeah.
that I didn't know it, but once I really was like in there, I was like, this is very complex and
Mm.
multidimensional. And so I'm just curious, like, how did you start to bite off a piece of it and like tunnel your way into, the
Yeah.
way that you practice?
I think, there was something, activated within me that just made me so fascinated, um, and then we live in this age of, like, the astrological renaissance, so there's so much rich material that is online, so I believe the first moves I made were to just watch, everyone learns about their chart first, right? So just obsessively reading and watching videos about my own placements. I found some online communities that were just having all these side conversations. I think as a Mars and Gemini person, I don't learn in a very linear way, and I really appreciate just taking little snacks of information from here and there and like building it into something. But I never felt, as people often do, intimidated because it was just so fascinating and really, really, really fun. And now looking back, that was, you know, a more than serendipitous, it was something happening, something churning, which led me on this path, and I've never been unfascinated since. And there are really complex parts of it that I like have on my list to like figure out zodiacal releasing. Yeah, it's just it just never it just gave, I guess is the feeling. I felt like I was just always nurtured by what I was learning, and then it, um, kinda snowballed. I started, like, writing full moon and new moon posts on, I think, Reddit, I think, and then, Chris Brennan noticed those. He's like, "You're a good writer," so that was, like, my first affirmation that I'm kind of okay at this, and people were, enjoying the content, and so it kind of grew organically from there, and it's been so surprising because it's one of the first things in my life I didn't, like, have a goal around, and so it's just been able to grow without too much of my, like, grasping, and so it's been talking about it feels kind of, like, jinxy because 'cause I'm like, I just want it to still be magical and
Oh, oh,
just grow
amazing.
organically, right? Yeah, but that's
Amazing.
pretty much the story.
Oh, thank you for that. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know that we can jinx our own calling.
I think
Can,
so.
can I ask you, and how old are you?
I am 32, about to be 33.
Yeah, that really strikes me that when you were talking about that you've always been a deeply spiritual person,
Mhm.
I when I had my reading with you, you said a couple of things that I was kind of like, "Oh, thank you for your teaching." Like it was so
Mm.
not that young people absolutely have wisdom, but like
Mhm.
you seem to, when I think about my relationship with tarot, I think that
Mm,
it's a relationship that's been going on for many lifetimes.
yeah.
And, I wonder how you explain to yourself the extent of your, not just your own enthusiasm
Mhm.
doing it and studying it, but also the impact that you have on people. Because I know that you get feedback about, you know, the experience that people have when you are literally just looking at,
Mm.
this image
Mhm.
of their chart and can tell them something so useful and detailed.
Yeah.
How do you kind of explain that to yourself? Or do you?
Yeah, I don't know that I do, something that you said when you introduced me is that I am a musician, and so since, I was a wee kid, I was songwriting, and I've always questioned, like, I don't know where the hell that comes from either. I feel like I am a conduit, and so over the years when I was an active musician, more active than I am now, people would ask me, "How do I write songs?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I mean, I would try to give them mechanics, like I was sad, try to write about feeling sad or try to get it out. And so the same thing is kind of present with astrology. There's a kind of magical interplay happening, and again, it feels like I'm just chosen to interpret the message. And people do give me feedback, and I never try to get too attached. And some part of me doesn't believe it, right? Because I'm like, I don't know if I'm good or not. But yeah, I never quite know how it comes and where it comes from, but I do know that it's supported by, continuing to learn and continuing to like put myself in communities that are excited about it just as I am. But yeah, big question mark for that.
What is your resistance to letting in people's experience of your work?
Oh god, it is, very vulnerable. Just like I would perform on stage, a lot of my natal chart sessions to me is it's kind of like a performance. It's a performance of information or, communicating messages. And so I think any artist gets really, really sensitive about feedback. And even if it's good feedback, it's like, oh shucks, like don't, like the humility. And that's something I'm growing out of because it's helpful to have positive feedback in terms of what I'm good at and what to exploit more. But yeah, there's just a level of vulnerability, being seen and being valued that unfortunately is kind of uncomfortable.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
How I relate to the conduit sense of it. I relate to that when I'm reading tarot for
Yeah.
people and when I'm making things, making art.
Mhm.
Um, how do you tend to your channel?
Mhm.
What do you do to maintain or nourish it or nurture it or keep it as,
Open. Yeah.
clear? Yeah, exactly.
I use it, I guess, like an instrument, so practicing. So I suppose I'm at a period in my career now where I am reading mini charts per week, and so that kind of keeps the muscle strong and active. I also nurture it by, again, continuing to learn. So never kind of assuming that I know it all or that my perspective is it or that there aren't, little tidbits of information that can still blow my mind. So I'm constantly still reading books and of course, on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, where people are sharing these very beautiful bite-sized nuggets of wisdom. And then another thing that I do in terms of, because I'm also a writer and I write about these things, and I don't know if you've ever experienced as an artist, like trying to make something come and then it doesn't. So
Yes.
I have learned to respect that. And in a content industry where if you aren't posting, you get forgotten about, it's really, really hard to adhere to my own timeline of inspiration. But I've noticed long enough that it does come, right? It does peak, and then I try to take advantage of it. And then it, flows away. And I like to look at that as like rest or incorporation. I'm still working with that because there's so many demands on like my time, again, like writing content for other people, and just letting it kind of happen as organically as it possibly can versus forcing it, which I believe feels a little bit more like work or labor.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so good. I really, I've been sort of complaining to my painting teacher that it's
Mm.
like, when's the muse gonna come? And
The
you know,
muse,
and
yes.
she was like, it'd be really good for you to just like lay on your couch and relax.
That's it, that's when they come. That's when
Yeah.
they come,
She was
yeah.
like, Stop exercising your will, you know? And it's really like, I need to hear it over and over again. I mean, we
Yeah,
all do
yeah,
capitalism, like, working all the time,
yes.
just the compulsive nature of that. And, you mentioned about kind of respecting your own rhythms and inspiration
Mhm,
and the demands of social media, which is, just insatiable.
yeah.
Uh, Curious, like how your relationship with that particular form of communication. You're very transparent, you're very open about yourself on social media. Um, and yeah, I'm just curious what that push pull is for you. I mean,
Mhm.
if I never had to ever do I mean, I don't have to ever do anything on social media ever again. And I have taken months long hiatus and so on and so forth. And, all
Yeah.
of the things. So I'm just curious how you manage that.
Yeah, well, it's like it giveth and it taketh away, right? So, yeah, it's been kind of hard to navigate because I feel like most people find me through what I've written on the internet, and so I have moments of time where like, "Oh, I haven't written anything or posted anything, like my business is gonna fail," the capitalistic mindset. But again, I think and this isn't just, like, something I've organically have done with astrology, but because I've been in, like, heavy reprocessing therapy for many, many years, again, kind of like, accepting when I don't have anything to share versus when I really, really, really do. So again, the moments of dearth, I'm able to remind myself like, hey, it'll be back maybe in like a month or two, and that's okay. And then just reacting then to other people's ideas and seeing what other people are doing. There is a cutthroatness about it and like a cattiness about it and a clickness about it. And to be honest, I am a human, so I'm not I'm not below kind of like stepping into the ring, which can be exhausting on the internet because I don't know. So again, just
You hold your own pretty well, I gotta
yeah, I
say.
try to. I really try to.
Yeah.
So yeah, when it feels damaging emotionally and sometimes physically, I'm like, okay, time to step away. And I've instituted something I like to call mute Mondays or silent Mondays, where I'm like, no social media, just recover from the weekend by doing nothing. And I still worry about that because I'm like, the algorithm's gonna forget about me, but whatever. I believe that the universe is intelligent enough to like hold both my willingness to not wanna go on social media and the fact that social media drives visibility. Like, I'll just let the cosmos figure that out. I can't do
Yeah,
it all the time.
I love that. So, you mentioned a little bit about sort of getting in the ring, and I'm
Mm.
curious, like, what in general the astro community is like. In
Yeah.
general, would you say? Is
Oh
there an in
gosh.
general with the astro community, or are there
I
kind
think
of like factions or
yeah, that's a good distinction. I would say there's factions because there's an astrological community offline, and then there's an astrological community online. To speak to the offline version, meeting people at conferences or meeting people at like meetups or like living around other astrologers, that's so nourishing. And you can imagine it's like stepping into a group or a room where everyone's kind of geeky over exactly what you're geeky over. And there's like kind of like transmission that's happening. That's so uplifting. And I've experienced that in real life. Online, it's a little tricky. The barrier to entry for this stuff is super low and it's experiencing like a boom. And so I'm not at all faulting people for, like, jumping on it and, like, seeing, what it could do for them. But that then gets, bad actors or, like, people who are harmful or vicious or, just not navigating it positively, whatever that looks like to me. And that's where things can get super, super dicey, and you have, like, cancellation culture or, like, opinion wars or don't buy this astrologer services, which it can get pretty hard. But honestly, the same people who are offline are majority online. And so you can still foster that same sense of beauty there. It just takes a little bit more like maintenance and like cutting out the voices who are going to distract from that.
yeah, far out, far out.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk about Astro Bash in a moment.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, uh, someone who is just interested, who's sort of an astro enthusiast,
Mm.
that's what I call myself,
Yes.
uh, or someone who's just kind of wanting to get started. What are your favorite beginner books or other sort of sources of what do
Yeah.
you where's a good place for a beginner to begin?
Looking at their own chart. So if you have the privilege of knowing your birth time, taking a look at your own and kind of leaning into astrology that way it feels kind of gratifying for you. But another way to enter is like through books and through podcasts. One of my favorite books that I do often shout out to like clients who want to learn more is The Inner Sky by Stephen Forrest. That was one of the first books where I was like, wow, like this astrology thing can do and say way more than I thought. It's very accessible to beginners, but there's like a poetry in it that I think is really helpful. Um, Backdating and like or just like watching all of the episodes of the astrology podcast because then you can get a really good like technical and historical understanding. And then like what I did was Google, right? So if anything kind of catches your fancy, whether it's like the Saturn return or your moon placement, to look those things up online and you may come across like a blog or a person on YouTube who you really resonate with and then you read all of their stuff or like, watch all of their stuff. So yeah, I would just go into it with an open-mindedness and a flexibility if it fascinates you, right? And then there's a few apps. So Time Passages is a really good app. The Channy app is a really good app, and that allows you to kind of like track things as they're happening in real time to you or to friends.
Amazing. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. And my other question is there a big astro story in this coming, season, this autumn that you or maybe not like the big astro story, but like something that other people aren't paying attention to that you are, or just, anything that you
Mm,
want to just maybe bring people's attention to think about in your inimitable way. Um,
interesting. Um, God, I'm like I one of my capacities as an astrologer is like I'm not so great at transits. I love like thinking about archetypes and like the theory. Um, but one thing that we're kind of in right now that's pretty important is Venus retrograde, co-present of Mercury retrograde. Now Venus will finally unretrograde in a few days, but then take her slow little time, moving through Leo. So that's one of the big things maybe that I would look forward to is the burst of clarity around like Venus governed topics. So people who are dealing with confusion, maybe with their love life, their financial life, their creative spark, as we talked about, to expect those things to kind of like light up as Venus moves faster in the sky, but then to also take heed over what was learned, like through all the complications and all that stuff. Um, Otherwise, Jupiter enters Gemini soon. It's going to hit our Mars, so information overload. That'll be really,
oh,
really, really fun.
wow. Yeah, that's
That's next year.
amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about Astro Bash a little
Yes,
bit.
thank you.
So this is a conference that's happening at the end of September, beginning of October in
Hmm.
Borrego Springs, California.
Yeah,
And why don't you just say a little bit about, I'm going to link to all of this in the notes,
thanks.
but go ahead and tell us everything.
So it'll be in Borrego Springs, as you said, from September 28th to October 2nd. We encourage IRL, presence if you can swing it, but we also opened up a live stream version. So you can register for either at the website that'll be linked in the show notes. It is an evolutionary astrology conference. It's not the first EA conference, but it is far smaller, more focused on like the heart to heart connection versus like stimulation or cerebral stimulation, right? Like going from lecture to lecture and taking notes and notes, which is fun. So it's more heart centered. I'm excited because Borrego Springs has like a very open, dark sky. So being able to witness the cosmos as we're talking about the cosmos. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. Stephen Forrest, who is one of my eminent kind of de facto mentors, who I've just kind of made him, even though he doesn't know, he will be speaking there. And so I couldn't like pass up the chance to see him in person again. Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm doing just volunteer work on getting like the message out there, and it's a labor of love, and it's coming together really, really well. And I hope people will come join us in the desert.
Huzzah. I think
Yes.
that's incredible. I love what you're saying about actually being able to look at the night sky that way.
Right?
And
Yeah.
also that you're offering an option that's accessible for people who can't travel for various reasons or COVID precautious or
Yeah.
whatever. I think that's amazing to do a hybrid version.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but I hope that it's like everything. I
Me
love it.
too.
I
Me
love
too.
that.
There's the first time jitters where it's like you don't know how it's going to go, but there's always something magical about, again, these inaugural events
What's been
that
the
happen.
process been like for you of helping to organize this?
It's been good. I mean, I have like a business side of me, so like handling all of that isn't too far outside my wheelhouse. It's been interesting and gratifying to get to connect with other astrologers in the process of getting this up off the ground. One of the things I've been doing is interviewing all of our speakers, and so I've had a very selfish kind of giggly moment to myself, like I get to put my face in front of all these people, and they're gonna like know me. I get to talk to them because some of them are like huge heavy hitters and like just people who have so much wisdom. So it's been gratifying, right? It's like those sweat beads that you wipe off your forehead at the end of the day, but you love what you've been doing. So it's
I
okay. It doesn't
love
feel like work.
that.
Yeah.
Good for you. You are busy.
I know. I
Yeah.
am. Yeah, that's why the
Yeah,
2-hour nap is important.
absolutely. Do you feel ready to move to the quick fire round?
Let's do it.
Let's
Yeah.
do it. Okay, so the quick fire round is a Q&A round. I mean, quick fire, like we can take as much time as we want, but
Okay.
basically you and I are going to be answering this series of questions. The first of which is, what are you practicing right now?
In terms of like spirituality and stuff like that?
Any way that you want to take that on.
I am practicing being present with my emotions as they show up in my body. That has been the work of the last several years of my life to understand that feelings are actually feelings. So that has been a daily ongoing practice for me.
Wow, mine is very much the same.
Is it?
And it feels yeah, I've been working with some somatics
Yes.
things, facilitators and grounding practices, and every single
Yes.
time I feel like I've never done it before. It feels so like I feel like I live in outer space and
Yes.
it's
It's like,
like
yeah.
drawing attention to the body like what?
Isn't that
You
so strange?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
it's
you mean
same.
people have sensations, you know?
Yeah.
It's yeah. And so I am practicing slowing down because I think that's actually
Mhm.
for me, and maybe more in general, kind of the thing that so
Yeah,
uh,
it's hard. It's hard.
erases the sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah. What or who are you listening to right now?
Well, I'm listening to a book that you recommended. I don't know if this counts as listening to. So Existential Kink, that has given me a whole new way to kind of delight in this complicated human experience of mine. So I'm listening to that. To be honest, this is going to be such a cliche answer, but Beyonce, because I just saw her live and she's a magical creature to me. And so listening to that makes me happy when I'm
Wow.
overwhelmed, especially.
What
Yeah.
was the show like?
It was so good in terms of, like, her, right? There's something I think Oprah said it was something like, "It's so crazy to witness the power or the magic that made the stars in a person right in front of you." Of course, that's true for everybody, but there was, like, a magical quality and a level of, like, mastery that you just can't help but to be in awe of with her. Yeah.
Wow. Well, when I got my Spotify roundup last year, Renaissance was like, it was just
Nice.
all, it just is kind of evergreen. It's always a
Isn't
good
it?
time to listen to it.
It
Yeah.
is, it is.
Amazing. I'm listening to an audiobook, a novel by Barbara Kingsolver called Demon Copperhead.
Mm,
And it's, I don't 20 hours long or whatever. It's
yeah.
uh, taking my time with that. The
Yes.
reader's excellent. It's so good to have a good
It
Carolyn
really
Elliott reads the book.
really well,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
well.
I'm also listening to it's late summer here in the Catskills, so you can know what season it is just by closing your eyes and listening, and it's
Ah, yeah.
definitely like that, katydids and,
Yes. Or the
insects and things like
cicadas.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. What are you reading right now?
Aside from Existential Kink, which I guess I'm listening to reading, I'm reading a book called Dare, um, which is about embracing anxiety and panic attacks, right? That's something that I kind of suffer with uh, from time to time, especially when life gets overwhelming. So the whole concept of the book is to invite it all in, which is like the opposite of what you would think when you have like a huge anxiety moment. You want to like get out of it. And so, practicing things or having somatics or having things you run to is important. But I think the main puzzle piece missing for me is just letting it happen. So
Wow.
that book has been or is being like very instrumental in terms of like, okay, it's a scary, uncomfortable feeling, and I'm just gonna have to tolerate it because I'm trying to feel my feelings.
Mars and Gemini really
Yes.
cuts both ways.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, sure
Gosh.
does. Um, I am reading a book called The Disordered Cosmos by
Mm,
Dr. I meant to bring it down so I might get a little, make it
yeah.
correct in the show notes, but Dr. Chandra Prescott Weinstein, she is a Black queer astrophysicist
Wow.
and studies dark matter. She's a theoretical physicist, and she is writing about science, about physics, with this incredible cultural,
Mm,
magical, amazing lens.
wow.
It's blowing my mind, and I'm about halfway through, so that's what
That
I'm
sounds like it's next up for me.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. I mean, the star stuff, like,
Star
that's
stuff.
the whole
Yeah.
thing. What are you watching right now? It could be media, but also non-media things.
What am I watching? Oh my God. I meant to prepare things so I wouldn't have like a mind blanking moment.
It's, taking time to think about something, that's just
Yeah,
so
yeah.
human.
Well, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I do watch a lot of TikToks. I specifically search for like people who are going through things I'm going through. So I don't do the For You page anymore because you'll just get sucked into it if you don't know what it is. It's like you keep scrolling forever. So I like looking up how people are living their lives. My favorite thing to look at is like my typical Saturday or this is what I do for a living. And I love getting into people's normal, regular lives. Of course, you can like do that with a celebrity or whatever. Like, oh, it's so cool and glamorous. But I like just like normal people doing normal stuff. And it's so fascinating to me. So I watch a lot of those.
My mind is blown for a few reasons. Number 1, I didn't know that you could, like
Do that on
I
TikTok.
I didn't know that there was anything other than the For You page.
Yeah.
Okay,
You
so
can search
you
things.
might have just
Yeah.
ruined my weekend, and and what you're talking about, I had a flashback to when I was living in the city, and my favorite thing to do would be people watching.
Yes. It's
Just
essentially that. Yeah.
yeah, wow,
Yeah.
okay,
It's so
okay.
fun.
I am not watching much in terms of, like, I'm not a TV watcher, really. I'm watching, what I'm watching right now are the trees because
Mm,
they're getting they're doing their thing, it's this poignant end of the season, they're doing their
yes.
thing. The place where I if I do meditate is right looking out at the treetops in front of my house,
Beautiful.
and I just feel like there's such a communication there,
Yes.
if I
Yeah.
actually just, like, stop this and, like, let in what they're up to.
Yes.
It's tree TV.
Tree TV, I
It's
love that.
what question are you living into right now?
What question am I living into right now? The first thing that comes to mind, and I'll always just trust the first thing that comes to mind, the question of like, what is possible, I
Mm.
suppose, because I'm at an interesting point in my life where, many doors open, you have to like be kind of discerning about which ones you walk through. And I'm having this moment about like, I wonder if the life I've dreamt of is actually like possible and like just like thinking about the open horizons of life. And I was, yeah, just opening my mind up to that a lot today and recently about like, I wonder if this is possible.
I
For
love
me,
that for you.
yeah,
Yeah, may it be so. May it be
right.
so. The question I'm living into, like, right now, it's not like a deeply existential, or maybe it is actually, but is the question I'm living into, or the question that I'm like working with is, does this need to happen right now?
Ooh, that's a good one.
I've been like a perpetual motion machine of compulsive activity.
Oh god,
And
yeah.
I think that's just a manifestation of anxiety and capitalism and all of the things.
Yes.
But, anytime I have like a little space open up, it's like, oh, I can mow the lawn, or I can do a little
Mhm.
laundry, or I can, oh, and it's like, does that need to happen right now, though?
Oh, I'm stealing that. 'Cause I'm
I'm,
also a busybody. Yeah.
yeah, it's like really just, I have my painting teacher in my head saying, like, lay on the couch and
Mm.
relax. It's like, I feel like I'm chasing the muse away with like constant activity.
Do you know something that blew my mind about, like, relaxation? There was, like, some study done, and I'm gonna paraphrase it, but it is true, if people are listening, about what, like, prehistoric versions of humans were doing most of the time, like foraging or, like, hunting or whatever, and I believe, like, over half of their lives was categorized under idle. Right? Just like nothing to do really, just like idling or being with the community or like talking or sleeping. I was like, wow, so we used to be that way. And I feel like society, modern society has like hijacked that. And now we feel like we have to do so much. Another book that came to mind that I finished reading is Laziness Doesn't Exist, which I so needed to hear. Um, yeah, I love
Wow,
that.
just the title.
Right? The title is a breath of, relief for someone like me who thinks I always need to be doing something. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I was a monk for many years and I'm still like,
Yeah.
we were busy over there too, though. I'll tell you that. Okay. What is keeping you up at night?
Um, I guess what is keeping me up at night is this upcoming conference. I kind of read that question as, like, the thoughts that prevent me from going to sleep, which tends to be, like, anxious thoughts. Yeah, so just wondering how it's gonna work out or if I'll meet friends or if it's gonna be, like, good and or bad. So, thinking a lot about that. Hopefully good.
Maybe so.
Yes.
What is keeping me up at night? I wrote down when I made notes about this, like everything, like just,
The
this
world,
state of the, that's all I'm going to say about that. What's
honestly,
inspiring
yeah.
you now?
What is inspiring me now? I guess, the same as you, I've always been inspired by nature, and catching glimpses of nature even when I'm doing like, I live in a cosmopolitan area, but, like, the glint of the sun sometimes or, like, the breeze, and I think summer is such a wonderful season because you get to be outside in nature with nature instead of, like, observing it from, like, the warmth of your home during winter. Yeah, so it's I always find clouds and trees really inspiring. I have since I was, like, a kid, so I find that really really refreshing and makes me hopeful and kind of like makes me feel open just as like the sky is. Yeah.
I love that. It reminds me when I lived in New York City, if I would catch a glimpse of the moon,
Oof.
I would like
Yeah.
grab people and be like, look, look,
Yes. Nature is among us.
be on that subway going above ground and being like, look at the moon.
Yes.
Um, what's inspiring me now? 11th house matters are inspiring me now,
Interesting.
actually. And
Okay.
that could be because Jupiter is in there
Yeah. For
right
you.
now.
So
So,
community?
yeah, the communities I'm part of, the different groups and classes, and just folks I organize with, and friend groups, and just other people's minds and
Mhm.
perspectives and wisdom
Yeah.
is really inspiring me right now.
I love that.
What has your attention right now?
What has my attention right now? I guess I to really reiterate, I think my own body has my attention right now. Cause like you, I'm very up in the sky, in the air all the time, and so learning how to be into the body means that I'm, like, kind of vigilant. Not in, like, a anxious way, but, just, like, curious. So, yeah, physical sensations have
Yeah,
my
I
attention.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. And also, I think related to that, my cat has my attention. I like to just
Always.
watch her.
Oh,
like in her physicality and,
yeah.
just the way she is.
I
It's
love cats. They're so magical. I have one behind me right there taking a nap.
Yeah, that one got up and did a little stretch and
She
then
did?
resettled during the
Oh,
course of things. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
Luna.
Yeah, just the way she bathes herself and she's just I don't know, I think there's a great teaching there about, like, my own
Yes.
animal nature, my own, like,
Yes.
naturalness or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
that
have
has
so
my
much animal intelligence. Like they know when to eat, they know when to sleep, they know when to clean themselves. And really, we do too. That simple kind of like Taurus wisdom where Jupiter is now. Those evergreen kind of things like, hey, did you drink water or are you hungry? And how that can like change, right? How you feel. So I love cats for that reason too.
mm. And our last question, how are you evolving right now?
Um, I am evolving quickly. Is that an answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like who I was 5 years ago, which, by the way, COVID was like a little bit of a time warp, so it feels like that was a decade ago. But I'm a very different person. I value much different things, more, nurturing things or robust things than I did before. So I am evolving quickly and with grace and with open arms.
Ah,
Yeah.
I love that. So I think that COVID has been an accelerator in all of the
Yes.
ways. And if, you know, you were on a path of evolution, that's yeah, I
Yeah.
relate to that. I feel like I'm evolving in the direction of like letting myself have things. Not
Mm.
and I don't mean like material things. I mean like letting myself have my life that I
Yes.
have, you know, dreamt of and
Yeah.
you know, not playing so much in the worst case scenario negativity sandbox.
I'm trying to get there.
It's a
Yeah.
process. It's
Yeah.
a process. Um, Thank you so much for this. Is there anything else
Yeah.
that you want folks to know? I'm going to have all of your website and contact info where people can find you, but anything else that you want people to know about?
About me, no, you can just follow me in the places where I'm followable. And if you want a reading or want me to recommend someone else to give you a reading, that's fine too. And if you're interested in astrology and want more tips, feel free to like reach out. I'm a talker. I love talking about this stuff. So it's never an imposition to ask a question.
So generous. And like people, whether you've had your natal chart done or not,
Mm.
get it done with
Yeah.
Camille
Oh, thanks.
because you're going to find out some really mind blowing things and feel better about all of it when
Yeah.
it's done.
It's affirming. In the natal chart session, I'm like, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And it's just maybe hearing it from a different voice and from a different lens just feels like, like finally someone gets it.
And you have some skill about the way that you frame things in a way
Thank
that's very
you.
empowering. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Have a beautiful weekend.
You too. Thank you.